I told my son that I have two sons and he isn't one of them. When I was 20, I got my girlfriend at the time pregnant. I was terrified, but I decided to man up and marry her. It was tough, but we made it work for 8 years. Then, I caught her cheating, and that was the end of our marriage. Despite the heartbreak, I committed to being the best father I could be to my son. My dad wasn't around when I was growing up, so I promised myself I wouldn't let my son down. He was my world. I had him every weekend. No matter how exhausted I was from working full-time and going to school, I made sure he always had my full attention when he was with me. He wasn't just my son, he was my best friend. We didn't have much money, but that didn't stop us from having some incredible adventures. He loved spending time with my family and even made friends in my neighborhood. I thought everything was going well, until he turned 11. That's when things started to change. He didn't want to visit me as much anymore. His mom had a new boyfriend who was well off, and I knew they were going on trips and doing fun activities on the weekends. At first, I didn't make a big deal out of it, thinking it was just a phase, but then he started seeing me less and less. After about 6 months, I was lucky if he visited me once a month. 9 months in, he stopped coming altogether. I spent 3 months calling, chasing, and begging, but I got nowhere. It was like he was slipping away from me. My family saw how much I was struggling, so they pitched in to help me hire a lawyer. We sued my ex for parental alienation, but I lost. To make matters worse, the court ordered me to pay more child support. As I was leaving the courtroom, my ex's lawyer approached me with an offer. They would cancel child support if I gave up my paternal rights. At first, I refused, but then the lawyer told me that this was what both my ex-wife and my son wanted. I couldn't believe it. I asked to speak to my son alone, and they agreed as long as both lawyers were in the room. When I asked him if he really wanted me to give up my rights, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Yeah." I tried to explain to him what that would mean, that I wouldn't be his dad anymore, and he wouldn't be able to visit me or my family, but he just stared back at me, like he was asking the time, and said, "Yeah?" I was shattered. I asked him again if he truly understood what he was saying. He calmly replied that he wanted to be his mom's boyfriend's son. I signed the papers that day, and from that moment until just 2 days ago, I never heard from him or anyone in my ex's family. It almost destroyed me. I started drinking heavily, staying drunk for weeks on end. One day, I drank so much that I passed out and aspirated my own vomit. I would have died if it weren't for a neighbor who noticed me convulsing through the window and called 911 after the mailman accidentally delivered a package meant for me to her house. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital with aspiration pneumonia. When I finally got out, I decided to move back to my hometown. I got a new job, started hitting the gym, and spent 4 years in intense psychotherapy. It took a long time, but I was eventually able to let go of the past and move on with my life. About 6 years after moving, I met my now wife. She had an 11-year-old son, and at first, I was pretty standoffish with him. But that kid was incredible. He slowly broke down my walls, and I couldn't help but fall in love with him. When he turned 18, he asked me to adopt him. His father had left when he was 5, never to be seen or heard from again. That day, when he asked me to be his dad, was the proudest day of my life. He and his mother turned my life around and gave me a reason to live again. Now, not only do I have my wonderful adopted son, who's 19 and currently serving in the Marines, but I also have a 4-year-old son and an 18-month-old daughter. My career has taken off, and I'm doing very well for myself and my family. I'm a comeback story, a man who went from being unloved and broken to a successful father of 3 with a beautiful wife and a happy family. I survived. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I got a call at my office. It was my ex-sister-in-law, informing me that my ex-wife had passed away. All I could say was, "Okay," before hanging up. It had been 14 years since I had had any contact with them, and I had no desire to know anything about their lives. On the 4th of July, my family and I were getting ready to go to a picnic when there was a knock on the door. I looked through the front glass and recognized him immediately. It was my first biological son standing there. I opened the door and he said, "Hello, Dad. I'm your son." Without a moment's hesitation, I looked him in the eye and said, "No, you're not. I have 2 sons, and you're not either one of them. Now please leave my property." He just stood there, dumbfounded, as I shut the door in his face. After a moment, he left. I immediately sent out a text to my family, letting them know that he was lurking around and that I had no intention of having any contact with him. I made it clear that if anyone in the family chose to have contact with him, I would cut them out of my life completely. It's been 14 years. I don't owe him or his family anything. I had to listen to my mother cry for him on her deathbed. I laid in a hospital bed, a machine breathing for me, wishing it would just turn off and let me die, all because of that child. Through therapy, I learned that while he had the right to make his own choices, I also had the right to make mine, and my choice was to move on without him as part of my family, just as he wanted. He has no right to come back into my life now and disrupt the peace I've built for myself and my family. My entire family stands by me on this, even my wife and in-laws. They all agree that nothing good can come of reintroducing him into our lives. He's 26 years old now. If his mother and her boyfriend had orchestrated this, he had 8 years to reach out to me, but didn't. Now that his mother is gone, suddenly I'm supposed to step up. I don't care if he was 12 or 200. He made the choice. And if you had seen the look in his eyes when he said yeah back then, you would have known, as I did, that he didn't give a damn about me. So I had to stop giving a damn about him to survive. He doesn't have the right to ambush me on my front porch and pretend like he's something to me now. Well, come to find out, it was my sister who had been giving him and my ex-sister-in-law my contact info. My sister, whom I love dearly, is beside herself that I won't give him a chance. Apparently, after he came to my house, he called her and broke down. I told her to stop right there. I don't care. But now she's begging me for our mother's sake to meet with him. So I ask you, what good could possibly come from meeting with him now?